I brought a small gift bag and a warm box of cinnamon rolls from the bakery near my old house. I thought I'd surprise them. See my granddaughter. Maybe stay for tea. But the door opened, and my son said, "Why are you here?" His wife followed, eyes cold. "Please don't come uninvited. We need space in our lives." I didn't fight, didn't speak. I just nodded, turned around, and walked back to my car. But something inside me cracked that day. And something else? It woke up. I'm not a man of many complaints. Never have been. Name's Richard Hayes. Born in Scranton, Pennsylvania, steel town, hardworking folks, small dreams that took big effort. I grew up in a modest two-bedroom house with a father who worked the night shift at a paper mill and a mother who made sure the lights stayed on even when the bills didn't. I followed in their footsteps, not in industry, but in discipline. I worked as a federal clerk with the Department of Veterans Affairs for over 34 years. Never took more than 5 sick days in all that time. Punched in, did the job, took the paycheck, came home. But my real job was at home. My wife, Linda, and our only child, David. Linda was my lighthouse. That woman had a laugh like a summer storm, loud, honest, impossible to ignore. She made our house a home. Did the scrapbooks, the bake sales, the little holiday cards with glitter that stuck to everything. When David came along, we had even less money, but somehow, life felt richer. I loved that boy like air. Coached his little league team. Taught him how to ride a bike on the sidewalk out front. He fell, skinned his elbow, cried hard. I cried harder when he finally rode solo, no training wheels, his little arms raised in victory. He grew. I guided. Tutoring, braces, summer camp, college applications, I was there. And when he got into Duke on a partial scholarship, I took a second mortgage to cover the rest. Didn't even blink. Then came Melissa. She was sharp, polished, said all the right things at first, "Sir," and "Mr. Hayes," and "Thank you for raising such a gentleman." But under that polite smile, I saw something hard, something calculating. Linda saw it too. "I just hope she doesn't clip his wings," she once whispered while we were folding laundry. They got married in Asheville. Small ceremony, mountain backdrop, crisp fall air. I helped pay for most of it. Suits, rentals, even a part of their down payment when they bought their first home outside Charlotte. Didn't think twice. That's what fathers do. But after the wedding, something began to shift. David started pulling away, not obviously, not cruelly, just less. Fewer calls. No more surprise visits. Holidays started to feel like interviews. Linda noticed it, too. "He loves us," I told her. "He's just building his own life now." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Then, in 2016, my world cracked in half. Linda was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. It was swift, brutal. 9 months later, she was gone. At her funeral, David stood beside me like a ghost of himself, hollow-eyed, distant. Melissa didn't shed a single tear. I moved through the motions after that. Coffee in the morning, walks in the afternoon, sleeping pills at night. I thought David would check in more, call to see if I'd eaten, ask how I was holding up. But grief is lonely, and I was left alone with mine. For a while, I held on to hope. When Ellie, their daughter, was born, I thought maybe, this would bring us close again. I knit a little blanket by hand. Yes, me, an old government man with arthritis in his knuckles. Took me for months. Blue and white, soft yarn. They never used it. Said they already had plenty from Melissa's side. I started noticing little things. Whenever I visited, Melissa would sigh if I stayed longer than an hour. David would check his phone more than he'd look at me. Once, when I brought Ellie a dollhouse I made from reclaimed wood, I overheard Melissa whisper, "He's always trying to impress her." It's exhausting. Still, I stayed silent. Kept showing up. Birthdays, holidays, always with something in hand. Cookies, toys, even groceries when I knew they were stretched. I wasn't trying to win favor. I was just trying to stay a father. It was Ellie's 6th birthday. I remember because I'd spent 2 weeks building her a tree swing. Not just any swing, but the kind that wraps around an oak and sways like a fairy tale. Painted it her favorite color, sky blue, with white stars. Even engraved her initials on the side. YH, just like I used to do for David. They hadn't invited me. But I figured, maybe they just forgot. Maybe things were busy. So I told myself, show up anyway, be the grandpa. Bring the swing, bring some brownies, and that old cowboy puppet Ellie loved. She always smiled when I did the voice. It was a sunny Saturday. Balloons on the mailbox, kids' shoes piled by the door, laughter echoing from the backyard. I knocked and waited. David opened the door, mid-conversation on his phone. He looked surprised. Not happy, not angry, just caught off guard. "Dad, what are you doing here?" My throat tightened. "It's Ellie's birthday. I brought something for her." He didn't move, didn't smile, just glanced over his shoulder, then back at me. And that's when Melissa appeared. Tank top, hair up, one hand holding a wine glass at 2 in the afternoon. She gave me a look like I was a solicitor selling vacuum cleaners. "Hi, Richard," she said flatly. "You weren't invited." "I know," I said gently. "I just thought I'd drop by for a minute. Just to see her." Melissa crossed her arms. "We really need you to call before showing up. It's disruptive. We have guests." David stood there, silent, just looking between us. Not defending, not inviting. "I brought her a swing," I said, voice smaller than I meant it to be. "Something I built. She might like it." Melissa blinked. "We already have a swing set. She doesn't need another one." I didn't say anything. I didn't ask to come inside. I didn't even step forward. And then David, my son, my only son, said, "Maybe it's best if we talk another time." I felt the blood drain from my face. Not because they shut the door, but because they shut off the feeling. I turned, walked slowly back to my truck. The brownies were still warm. The cowboy puppet sat in the passenger seat, grinning like a fool. I sat behind the wheel for a long time. Didn't cry, didn't scream. But inside me, something shifted. A quiet, cold click, like the turning of a lock. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my recliner, lights off, holding the little cowboy puppet in my lap. The same one I'd used to make David laugh when he was 3. Back when he'd call me Pops, tug on my sleeve to show me his drawings, back when he loved me without conditions. But that version of him, he was gone. And maybe I'd been blind to how long it had been. I looked around the house, my house. The living room still had the old baby gate I'd refused to take down. The hallway still had the pencil marks where I used to measure David's height every year. My wife's chair still sat by the window, with the faded quilt she made before the cancer got bad. Everything in that house was memory. And suddenly, memory started to feel like a trap. I stood up, walked slowly into David's old room. Still had his baseball trophies on the shelf. Still had the framed picture of the two of us from his high school graduation. That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I opened a bottle of whiskey I'd been saving since my wife's funeral, sat by the kitchen window, and let it burn. Not the alcohol, the truth. The truth that I'd spent my whole life giving and giving. And now, there was no one left who saw me. I wasn't Dad. I wasn't Grandpa. I was a drop-in, a background character in someone else's life. Around 3 a.m., I found myself scrolling through Zillow. Just curious, I told myself. Retirement communities, small towns, places with trees, places where people say good morning without looking at their phones. I clicked through photos of a villa in Asheville, North Carolina. 2 bedrooms, porch swing, surrounded by maples. It had a little sign above the fireplace in the listing photos that said, "A quiet life is a blessed one." I don't know what happened in that moment, but something in me snapped into focus. I whispered out loud, maybe to my wife, maybe to God, "I'm done begging to be loved." That was the night I stopped being Dad. Not out of hate, but out of release. I closed my laptop, put the puppet in a box, and went to sleep. Really sleep, for the first time in weeks. The next morning, I made coffee, black, hot, and I didn't cry. That was new. No heavy sighs, no dragging feet, no checking my phone for a call that wasn't coming. Just stillness. I made a list that day. At the top, move. I called a real estate agent I'd known for years, Lindsay from Coldwell Banker. She used to babysit David when she was in high school. "Mr. Callahan," she said, "you finally ready to sell that place?" I smiled. "Yes, I am." Quietly. Within 2 weeks, the house was listed. I told her, no sign in the yard, no family contact. Just sell it, straight up, no noise. She got me a great offer from a couple moving in from Texas, full cash. Done deal. I had 21 days to pack up the home I'd lived in for 36 years. And you know what surprised me? It felt good. Liberating. Each box I taped shut, each drawer I emptied. It was like shedding old skin. I didn't cry when I packed my wife's scarves. I didn't flinch when I took David's photos down. I kept a few things. My favorite chair, some books, my wife's wedding ring. Everything else went to Goodwill. Then, I booked a one-way ticket to Asheville, North Carolina, a place I'd only ever seen in photos. But something about it whispered peace. When I arrived, the sun was setting behind the mountains. My new home was waiting, smaller, warmer, cozier than I imagined. The porch swing creaked like a gentle hello. Inside, there was a welcome basket from the community manager, homemade cookies, a folded map, and a note that said, "You're not alone here." I stood there, in the middle of that living room, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I belonged somewhere. Not because of who I was to someone else, but because of who I was becoming on my own. The community was quiet, kind. Retirees mostly. Some widowers, a few couples, a woman named Carol who baked pies and invited everyone over on Saturdays. I started walking every morning at 6 a.m. Started painting again, something I hadn't done since college. I grew tomatoes on the back patio. I learned how to play chess from an 83-year-old named Ray who beat me mercilessly and laughed every time he did. I opened up a local bank account, transferred my savings, met with a lawyer. I changed my will. Everything had once been in David's name. The house, the land in Tennessee, the annuities, the life insurance. All set up with the intention of making his life easier. But now it was different. I donated the land to a conservation trust, left most of my money to an orphanage in Cincinnati, where I was born, set aside a small college fund in my granddaughter's name, and wrote a letter to be opened with my will. A letter that said, in part, "If you ever wondered why, I didn't disappear to punish you. I disappeared to save what little of me was left." I signed it with love, because I do love him, but I also love myself now. One afternoon, I was sitting on my porch when Carol walked by with a pie tin in hand. She smiled and said, "You always look so peaceful out here." I laughed. "Peace is new to me," I said. She nodded. "It suits you." And in that moment, I realized this was the life I never knew I needed. Not flashy, not loud, not dependent on anyone's approval, just mine. Back in Denver, life didn't go as smoothly for David and Amanda. I didn't know right away because I wasn't watching. I wasn't tracking their socials. I wasn't calling mutual friends. I had let go. But news has a way of traveling. It was Ray, the chess master, who first mentioned it. He was reading the local news on his tablet and said, "Isn't Callahan your last name? There's a David Callahan here, CEO of some tech company. Says they're filing for bankruptcy." I looked up slowly, and there it was. Invacor Tech shuts down. CEO David Callahan under fire for financial mismanagement. I didn't feel joy, didn't pump my fist, just silence. Because karma doesn't come with trumpets. It comes quietly, like an unpaid debt. The article said they'd laid off 200 employees. That Amanda's boutique, funded by his company's seed money, had also gone under. Loan defaults, frozen assets, pending lawsuits. Their dream life, the modern house, the electric SUV, the trips to Aspen, all gone like breath on glass. It didn't take long after that. I got the first message 2 weeks later. "David, Dad, I know we haven't talked in a while. I hope you're okay. Can we talk sometime?" I didn't reply. Then another. "We could really use your advice, your help." Still silence. A week later, I got a voicemail from Amanda, her voice shaking beneath a forced sweetness. "Hi, Mr. Callahan. I know we've had our differences, but things have been difficult. We didn't mean to push you away. Can we please talk? David misses you. Ellie does too." Ellie, my granddaughter. She was 6 now. I stared at the phone for a long time, then put it down. I wasn't ready, but I did look up their house online. It was listed. Motivated sellers. Price reduced. I imagined the walls, once pristine, now hollow. Furniture gone. Kitchen echoing. That house had once been full of laughter. Mine too once. And now, both were someone else's. But here's the thing. I didn't need revenge. I didn't want to see them suffer. I just needed them to understand. When you cut someone out of your life, you don't get to ask for them back only when it's convenient. You don't get to treat people like spare tires, pulling them out only when you're stranded. Especially not your father. There's a strange thing that happens when you finally let go of needing to be seen. That's when people start noticing you. Not the version they wanted you to be. Not the convenient, soft-spoken, always available father. But you, the man behind the silence. It started small. I'd walk around the retirement community in Tucson, where I'd moved, and people would wave, smile, offer a seat beside them during bingo night. Folks didn't know my past, didn't care that I wasn't successful, by the world's standards. To them, I was Jack, the guy who brought homemade banana bread to potluck Sunday, the one who listened more than he spoke. I volunteered at the local library, reading to kids during story hour. Little ones who'd never heard Goodnight Moon the way I read it. They clapped, they hugged, they called me Grandpa Jack. It filled something in me I didn't know was still hungry. One morning, I was helping unload canned food for the shelter drive when Margaret, a retired school principal with silver curls and a firecracker laugh, said something I'll never forget. She looked at me, hands on her hips, and said, "You know what you are, Jack? You're peace. The kind that walks into a room and makes it better just by sitting down." I almost laughed. Me? Peace. There was a time when I was nothing but noise inside. But maybe, just maybe she was right. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to prove anything. Not to my son. Not to Amanda. Not even to myself. I wasn't hoping they'd call. I wasn't aching to be invited back. I had a home now. A real one. With a porch swing, hummingbirds, and a neighbor who baked pies just because it was Wednesday. The truth? I missed Ellie. But even that ache, it softened. Because I knew what love felt like now. Clean, warm, given freely. One day, while walking past a group of college kids who were helping plant a community garden, one of them, a tall boy with freckles, asked, "Hey sir, you live here? You seem like you've got it all figured out." I chuckled and said, "Kid, I'm 69 years old. I only just started figuring it out this year." He laughed and handed me a shovel. That's the thing about life. Sometimes you think it's ending, but it's actually beginning, just somewhere you didn't expect. It was a Saturday, mid-October. The leaves in Tucson don't fall quite like they do in the Midwest, but the breeze had that dry crispness, the kind that tells you something's about to change. I was sitting on my porch, sipping coffee, flipping through a Reader's Digest magazine, when I saw a car slowed down by the front gate. Black SUV. California plates. I already knew. The gate buzzed. I pressed the intercom. "Dad, it's me." It took me a second to recognize his voice. Not because it changed, but because it had desperation stitched into every word. I let them in. They stepped out, my son, Thomas, wearing an expensive blazer like armor. Amanda followed, her hair done perfectly, lips pressed tight. And behind them, Ellie, my granddaughter. She was 12 now, taller, holding a small stuffed flamingo. I hadn't seen her in 2 years. Thomas stepped forward first. "Dad, we wanted to see you. We've been trying to reach you. You called twice. In 24 months. I replied, calm as still water. He winced, glanced at Amanda. She jumped in quick. "We were going through some things. Thomas lost his job, and I'm between consulting clients. It's been a rough season." She said it like they'd had a tough vacation, not like they'd cut me off. Thomas took a deep breath. "Look, I know we haven't been in touch, but we could use your help, Dad. Just a loan, something temporary." There it was. The reason they came. Not to say we're sorry. Not to ask about my health. Not even to reconnect. Just money. I stood still for a moment, then turned and walked inside. They followed. My living room was cozy. Quiet. Pictures of desert sunsets, a shelf filled with books, a chessboard I played alone sometimes. On the coffee table, I placed an envelope. Amanda raised an eyebrow. Thomas looked at it, then at me. "What's this?" "My will," I said gently. "And the property sale deed." His hands trembled a little as he picked it up. He flipped through. His face turned pale. Amanda leaned over, scanning the lines. Then she saw it. Everything, real estate, bank accounts, retirement investments, had been transferred. Not to him, not to them, but to a nonprofit children's foundation in New Mexico. Everything except a small savings account, Ellie's name on it. Amanda gasped. This is a joke, right?" I shook my head. Thomas looked at me, his voice cracking. "Dad, why would you do this?" I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I said, "Because love isn't a transaction." Amanda stepped forward, her words sharp, trying to regain control. "You abandoned your family. You punished us." I looked her dead in the eye. "No, Amanda. You abandoned me. The day you told me not to come uninvited, when I was just trying to bring my granddaughter a gift. That was the day you drew the line." The room went quiet. Even Ellie was still. Then she said softly, "Grandpa, do you still have the flamingo?" I turned. That pink stuffed flamingo. I'd given it to her when she was 5. She used to take it everywhere. I nodded. "It's in my study. You want to see it?" She smiled. Amanda started to object, but I raised a hand, firm but gentle. I'm going to show her the flamingo. You two can wait here, or leave. Ellie and I walked to the back room. She saw the shelf where it sat, dusty but safe. She picked it up and hugged it tight. Why did they stop letting me see you? She whispered. My throat burned. Sometimes adults forget how to love without conditions, sweetheart. She nodded. She understood more than I expected. We walked back to the front room. Thomas and Amanda stood there, stiff, speechless, defeated. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't offer comfort. I simply said, your world shifted the day you chose pride over love. I rebuilt mine from silence and peace and people who saw me. And then I opened the door. They didn't say goodbye. But Ellie turned around, flamingo in her arms, and said, Will I see you again, Grandpa? I smiled. Anytime you want. This door's always open for you. After they left, the house was still, but it wasn't empty. There was no anger swirling inside me. No regret. Just a strange, peaceful weight in my chest, like the truth had finally landed. I sat back down on the porch with my coffee. It had gone cold. Didn't matter. The sun was lower now, casting gold across the gravel yard. I thought about what had just happened. For years, I had imagined that moment. Maybe I'd shout. Maybe I'd cry. Maybe they'd fall to their knees, apologize. But the real thing? It was quieter than I'd dreamed. And somehow stronger. I didn't need to break anything to prove I was whole. A week passed. Then two. No calls. No texts. But one morning, a letter came. Not an email. Not a voicemail. A real letter in a white envelope. From Ellie. Her handwriting was uneven, big, loopy letters. Dear Grandpa, thank you for the flamingo. I named her Rosie again. I miss you. I asked Mom if I could visit. She said maybe. I hope it's yes. Love, Ellie. I read that letter 10 times. Folded it gently. Tucked it inside my journal. I didn't respond right away. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But I knew the reply had to come through her parents. Through respect. Through earned bridges. I left a voicemail on Thomas's phone. Ellie's welcome anytime. But I won't fight for a place in your life anymore. I'm not a ghost. I'm not a charity case. I'm your father. I never heard back. But I knew they heard it. Because a month later, a second letter came. This time, from Amanda. Short. Formal. Guarded. We're considering letting Ellie visit during spring break. If you're open to that, we can talk about dates. I didn't smile. But something softened inside me. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But possibility. These days, I spend my mornings tending the cactus garden out back. I volunteer twice a week at the local children's center, read books, play chess, fix old toys. Sometimes, I sit quietly and write letters I never send. To my wife. To my younger self. To the son I still love, but no longer wait for. And to Ellie. I always send those. Each one with a joke, or a riddle, or a photo from when she was small. She always writes back. She's 12 now. But her words hold more care than anything I got from her parents in 20 years. She ends every letter the same way. I love you more than Rosie. That's all I needed. Not a mansion full of people. Not a Thanksgiving table with forced smiles. Just one soul, one heart, that remembered who I was and still wanted to know me. Sometimes healing doesn't come in the form of reunion. It comes in the shape of peace. And peace feels like this porch, this sun, this silence. And a child's letter that smells faintly of bubblegum. It's funny how the world keeps spinning after your heart cracks wide open. Even funnier, how much lighter life feels when you stop begging for love that should have been freely given. The final letter I ever wrote to my son wasn't bitter. I didn't blame him. I simply said, I raised you the best I knew how. If you remember even a piece of that, pass it on. If not, let it stop with me. Either way, I'm okay now. I never heard back. And I stopped checking. That was freedom. I stopped replaying that day on their doorstep. Stopped rewinding the insult, the cold tone, the way Amanda crossed her arms like I was an intruder in my own bloodline. That memory no longer made my chest ache. It was just information. A turning point. Not the end of my story. The villa became home in every way. Neighbors waved. The young couple across the street brought me pie on Sundays. I fixed bikes for the kids on the block, even installed a swing on the old tree in front. They called me Mr. Pete or Uncle Pete. Not Dad, not Grandpa, but still love, still connection. One afternoon, Ellie finally came. She was taller than I remembered, but when she saw me, she dropped her suitcase and ran straight into my arms. We didn't talk much that first hour. She just sat beside me on the porch, drinking Sprite and watching the hummingbirds. Her eyes scanned everything. The chimes, the flamingo statue, the photo of her grandma by the door. Then she said softly, "I wish I could live here." My throat tightened. "Well," I said, "you always have a room here. Whether you visit or just need to remember this place exists, it's yours." We made pancakes the next morning. She added too many chocolate chips, and the fire alarm went off, but we laughed until our stomachs hurt. We didn't talk about her parents. She didn't need to carry that weight. Not yet. Let them face their own silence. Let them wonder what it feels like to be left behind. Because for the first time in decades, I wasn't waiting on the next apology. I was living my life. Fully. Freely. I planted sunflowers out back, even though they always droop in the heat. They still try to reach the sun, and maybe that's all any of us are doing. When folks ask me if I ever reconciled with my son, I tell them the truth. We had our moment. It passed. I hope he finds peace. But my door isn't open anymore. And I mean it. I didn't slam that door. I just gently closed it, and then turned toward the life waiting for me. Some endings don't come with music or a final bow. Some just come with a soft sigh, a full heart, and the knowledge that you don't owe anyone an explanation for choosing peace. So if you're someone reading this, wondering if it's okay to walk away from people who forget your worth, yes, it is. Because sometimes, the strongest thing you can do for your soul